The wind of the frontier carried a strange sound that morning, something between a cry for mercy and the sharp crack of a wooden door slamming shut. Folks in the settlement heard it but kept their eyes low, pretending they had not. Life out here in the old American plains taught people silence more than courage. Trouble was common, but stepping into another household's trouble could bring ruin. Still, even the bravest men felt a sting of shame whenever the trembling voice of a woman broke through the cold air. The voice belonged to a woman called Leora, a gentle soul who deserved peace, not fear. She had once been known for her quiet smile and steady hands, the kind that could mend a torn shirt or tend a wounded calf without losing breath. The settlement saw her as someone made of soft strength, but strength could fade under the wrong roof, especially under the shadow of a man like Brant, her husband, a ranch hand whose anger was faster than his reason. His heavy footsteps were enough to send people stepping aside, and his presence made Leora shrink in ways she never had before marriage. She rarely lifted her eyes in public now, holding her shawl tight over her shoulders as if trying to protect herself from something people pretended not to see. On that winter morning, fresh snow lay across the ground, the kind that muffled footsteps but amplified pain. Leora stumbled out of the cabin with her hair loose and her breath unsteady. Brant had shoved her out in a rage no one understood. And before she could pull herself up, he reached her again, grabbing her by the arm. His grip was tight enough to leave marks. Leora bit the inside of her cheek, fighting the instinct to cry out, knowing that if she showed fear, he would only grow more furious. A few settlers paused in the street, but none walked toward her. They hated the sight, but fear held them still. Brant was not a man to challenge lightly. Even the sheriff kept his distance, unless things went too far. And to most men here, this was a private matter, one they believed a husband had full right to control. Leora knew this truth too well. She had tried asking for help once, only to be told that a wife must learn to endure, that storms in a marriage settle if she stays quiet. She tried until silence became a cage with no door. But fate is strange. Sometimes help comes from where no one expects it, carried by the wild wind from the mountains, far beyond the settlement. An Apache warrior named Kellen rode through the valley with a purpose that no one around here could have guessed. His tribe watched the land with careful eyes, for this settlement, once small, had grown quickly, and misunderstandings between settlers and Apache bands had become common. Kellen had traveled to look for signs of cattle movement, tracks, changes in the land, anything that might speak of coming conflict. He was known for his calm judgment, for reading the world like a living map. But that day his path shifted when he heard something that did not belong to the wind. A cry. A woman's cry. A sound sharp enough to pull his attention away from his task and toward the wooden buildings. Clustered against the snowy street, he urged his horse forward, his long dark hair flowing behind him, tribal beads brushing his chest as he rode. He did not know the settlers well, nor did they know him, but he understood pain when he heard it. And he also understood something deeper. No one should stand alone in fear. While he was near. When Kellen reached the edge of the settlement, people stiffened. Apache warriors were respected, but fear often grew where knowledge was thin. Yet Kellen did not raise a weapon, nor did he shout. His sharp gaze locked on only one thing, the woman held by a man who towered over her. A man who gripped her arm as if she were nothing but an object he owned. Leora lifted her eyes for the first time, froze when she saw the rider. It was not fear that struck her, but a strange spark of hope rising from the deepest part of her heart. Something about the warrior's posture, the calm strength and the way he sat upon his horse, felt like safety. She had not felt safety in years. Brant noticed her sudden stillness and followed her gaze. When he saw the Apache, his grip tightened as if he needed to show ownership. "Get inside," he growled, pulling her toward the doorway. Kellen saw the jerk of her arm, saw the fear she tried to hide, and something hot stirred inside him. He guided his horse closer, slow enough not to startle her, firm enough to make Brant pause. The horse's hooves pressed into the snow with steady rhythm. Breaking the hush that had fallen across the street, Brant straightened, puffing up his chest. "This is my land, my wife. Stay out of this," he snapped. Kellen did not respond right away. He studied Brant, then looked at Leora, noticing the redness on her arm and the tremble in her breath. His jaw tightened. When he finally spoke, his voice carried calm fire. "Her spirit is breaking." That single sentence stirred the entire street. People whispered, unsure whether to intervene or stay back. Leora felt tears threaten but swallowed them down, afraid one drop would make Brant explode. Brant shoved her again. "She's fine. She has work to do," he snapped. Kellen's hand moved to the reins, his muscles tightening as if preparing for something he could not yet name. His words came low. "No woman is fine when fear lives in her eyes." Leora felt something inside her shift. She had prayed for help for years, whispered to the sky in the middle of the night, asking for someone to save her from the life she had been forced into. She never expected that help would arrive on horseback, dressed in beads and leather. Moving like a part of the wind itself, Brant stepped forward, ready to challenge the warrior. But Kellen's horse moved between them in one smooth motion. The sudden barrier sent murmurs rippling across the settlement. People who never dared stand against Brant watched with held breath. Kellen extended his hand toward Leora, not touching her, only offering a choice she had never been given. For a heartbeat, she stood frozen. This decision could change everything. She knew the danger. Leaving her husband, trusting an Apache, facing a world she did not understand. Yet staying meant living in fear until she lost the last piece of herself. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears. She looked at Brant, saw the rage building in his face. Then she looked at the warrior, whose eyes held no threat, only fierce protection. Her feet moved. Kellen leaned down, strong arms steadying her as she placed her hand in his. The settlement gasped. Brant roared with fury, rushing forward. In one swift motion, Kellen pulled Leora onto the horse, turned its head, and kicked into a powerful ride through the snowy street. People scattered as the horse burst forward, snow spraying behind its hooves. Leora clung to Kellen's waist, feeling the world blur past her. For the first time, she felt air fill her lungs without fear, choking it. Brant's voice echoed in the distance, his threat swallowed by the wind. But he was not a man to let something go quietly. His fury promised trouble, danger, pursuit. Kellen knew this too. He felt Leora trembling behind him, and he tightened his hold on the reins, guiding the horse toward the distant hills where safety might wait. But safety was never guaranteed. Brant would not stop, and the settlement would soon have to choose sides. The frontier had witnessed many storms, but the storm now rising from a woman's desperate choice and a warrior's bold act would test every soul across the valley. And as the horse raced toward the horizon, Leora realized her life was no longer her husband's to control. Yet she also knew something even more frightening. Running was only the beginning. Snow brushed against Leora's cheeks as Kellen's horse carried them farther from the settlement. Yet the warmth coming from his steady frame felt stronger than the cold air rushing past. She held on to him tightly, fearing that if she loosened her grip even for a breath, Brant's hand would reach out from the shadows and drag her back to the life she had finally escaped. Her heart raced with the rhythm of the horse's stride, each beat reminding her that she had stepped into a new world, one filled with danger she could not yet measure. Kellen guided the horse up a narrow rise overlooking the valley. From here, he could see everything, the rooftops of the settlement shrinking behind them, the open fields stretching toward the distant mountains, the thin trail of smoke rising from Brant's chimney. Leora followed his gaze and felt fear crawl up her spine. She knew Brant would not simply accept her loss. He would come after her with every ounce of fury he possessed. She did not know how far he would go, but she knew enough to feel the weight of it. Kellen sensed the tension in her breath. "He will follow," he said quietly, not as a warning, but as a truth. "But you are not alone now." Leora swallowed hard. "I do not want trouble to fall on you." "Trouble finds its own path," he replied. "What matters is what we do when it arrives." His words eased her fear just enough for her lungs to steady. Kellen spoke with a calm strength she had never heard before, and though she barely knew him, something deep inside told her he was a man who meant every word he offered. Still, She wondered why fate had sent him at that exact moment. Why would an Apache warrior risk standing against a settlement man for a woman he did not know? They rode toward a small shelter Kellen had built earlier in the season when traveling through these lands. It stood near a cluster of pine trees, protected from the harshest winds, offering a moment of rest. He dismounted first, then offered his hand to help Leora down. Her legs trembled when her boots touched the ground, not from cold, but from everything she had just lived. Kellen guided her inside the shelter where a small fire pit lay ready to kindle. She watched him gather a few dry sticks, striking a spark until a flame flickered to life. Warm color lit the small space, softening the shadows around them. Leora stood by the entrance for a moment, unsure whether she should sit or keep distance. Kellen noticed but gave her no pressure. He moved with the calm of someone who understood that trust was a fragile thing. "You can rest," he said gently. "You are safe for now." She lowered herself onto a blanket he laid near the fire. Her fingers shook as she rubbed warmth back into her palms. Kellen sat a few feet away, respectful, focused on listening to the wind outside. Leora appreciated that silent space. No one had ever offered her peace without expecting obedience. They stayed quiet for a long moment. The crackle of the fire was the only sound, but both knew danger lingered beyond the trees. Leora finally found her voice. "Why did you help me?" Kellen looked into the flames before answering. "A warrior listens to more than words. Your cry carried pain, and your spirit carried strength. No one should be left to suffer when another has the power to change it." Leora pressed her hands together. "People saw what happened many times. No one dared to help." "Fear binds men differently than honor," Kellen said. "But your life should not be measured by someone else's fear." His words stayed in her heart. She had grown used to silence, too shrinking herself so she would not spark her husband's temper. Yet sitting here, hearing truth spoken with such clarity, made her realize how deep her wounds went. Not just on her skin, but in the places inside her where hope once lived. She looked at Kellen again. "You do not fear, Brant." "I do not fear injustice," he replied. "Fear is a shadow. Action is light." Outside, a gust of wind rattled the branches. Kellen stiffened slightly, sensing every shift in the world around them. Leora watched him, realizing for the first time that he carried his own weight. His own history that shaped the way he moved and spoke. She wondered about his tribe, his people, the reasons he roamed these lands alone today. Kellen noticed her thoughtful look. "You want to ask something?" She hesitated. "Do you travel alone often?" "Many times. My band watches the land, the rivers, the mountains. We protect what belongs to us and stay aware of what changes." He paused, then added, "Lately the settlers have expanded quickly. My people choose caution." Leora nodded with understanding. "I suppose the settlers are not always kind." "Some are," he said. "Some are not. But kindness travels like wind. It reaches those who listen." His gaze softened. "You listened." Leora felt her throat tighten. "I did not know if you would help." "You hoped," Kellen said. "Hope is a powerful guide." She lowered her eyes, tears gathering. She quickly wiped them away, embarrassed. Kellen did not stare or pity her. He simply let her breathe. As night crept over the valley, the fire dimmed slightly. Kellen fetted another stick, keeping the warmth steady. Leora watched his hands, strong yet precise, hands that could fight but also protect. She wondered what kind of life shaped a man like him. Before she could speak again, Kellen's attention snapped to the distance. He rose quietly and stepped outside. Leora followed to the doorway, heart pounding. She saw nothing at first, but Kellen tilted his head, listening in a way she never learned. "What is it?" She whispered, "Movement. Far off? Maybe nothing. Maybe not." Fear tightened her breath. "You think he is coming already?" "He would ride hard if anger rules him," Kellen replied. "But the night hides many things." Leora hugged her arms around herself. "I never wanted to bring danger to anyone." "You are not the cause of his anger," Kellen said firmly. "His choices belong to him alone." She nodded, though doubt still gnawed at her. For years she had been told that every problem was her fault. that she pushed Brant too far, that she asked too much, that her fear was weakness. The words had settled like stones in her chest. Kellen's calm strength chipped at them. But they were not gone yet. They returned inside the shelter, but neither felt fully at ease. The fire warmed their hands. Yet the unknown cold outside crept into their thoughts. Kellen finally spoke again, breaking the tension. "Tell me about your life before him." Leora hesitated, then began slowly. "I grew up with my sister on a small homestead farther east. My parents taught us to work hard and stay honest. When they passed, my sister married a wheelmaker, and I married a ranch hand. People said Brant was strong, dependable, someone who would protect a family. But strength without mercy is a dangerous thing." Kellen listened without interruption. At first he was quiet, stern but manageable. Then responsibilities grew heavy on him, and he began to take that weight out on me. I tried to help, tried to bring peace to our home. Nothing changed. I believed it was my duty to stay, to endure, because I had no one else. Her voice wavered. Until today, Kellen studied her with a steady, thoughtful gaze. "Your courage began long before today. You endured because your heart sought harmony. Leaving does not erase your past. It strengthens your future." Leora felt a pulse of warmth in her chest. These were words she'd never imagined hearing, especially from someone outside her world. Yet even with this reassurance, she knew their path ahead was not safe. Brant would not rest. The settlement would talk. The sheriff might take sides. And Kellen, by helping her, might bring unwanted conflict to his own band. Kellen stood again, checking the entrance. "We cannot stay here long. When the sun rises, we must move toward the ridge. There is a place where my people meet. They will decide what must be done." Leora felt fear and relief at once. Meeting his people meant stepping into a world she barely understood. Yet it also meant stepping farther away from the life she feared. Still, the unknown carried its own weight. "What if they do not want me there?" She whispered. "They will see truth," Kellen said. "They will judge by your spirit, not your past." She looked into his eyes, seeing sincerity she never found in her husband's. "Are you certain?" "There is strength in you," he answered. "My people honor strength." They settled in again, but sleep did not come easily. Outside, the wind grew louder, carrying the distant call of an animal or something else entirely. Leora curled beneath the blanket, staring at the fire as shadows danced along the walls. Her thoughts twisted between fear, hope, the uncertainty of what tomorrow would bring. Kellen stayed awake, keeping watch with quiet patience, his silhouette steady against the firelight. Leora watched him for a moment, grateful in ways she could not yet speak. She did not know his full story, nor did he know hers. But fate had tied their paths together in a way neither expected. As the fire crackled softly, a single truth settled in her heart. She had stepped into a new life, but the storm chasing her had not yet passed. Dawn came slow over the ridge, painting the sky in faint gold and pale red. Frost clung to the pine branches, and the air bit at Leora's cheeks as she stepped out of the shelter. For a moment she forgot her fear and simply stared at the open valley. The quiet old American land stretching out like a giant sleeping under snow. Then memory rushed back. Somewhere behind them, Brant was waking too, and he would not be waking alone. Kellen had already saddled the horse. His breath misted in the cold as he checked the straps with careful hands. Leora watched him move, noticing the way he carried himself with discipline, as if every motion was part of a silent promise to stay in control. He glanced her way once, reading the worry on her face without needing a word. "He will ride hard today," Kellen said. "Men like him do not accept losing control." Leora wrapped her shawl tighter. "He has friends. Men who drink with him, who complain about the frontier, and blame others for their own anger. They will follow if he asks." Kellen nodded. "Then we must reach my people before he reaches us." They mounted and rode toward the ridge, the horses' hooves crunching through the thin crust of ice. As they climbed higher, the world below grew smaller. Leora kept looking back, searching for any sign of riders following their trail. She saw only rising light and the pale line of their path. But her heart refused to relax. At the top of the ridge, Kellen slowed the horse. Below, nestled between rocks and pines, stood the winter camp of his band. Thin trails of smoke rose from low shelters. Figures moved with purpose, tending fires and preparing for the day. Children ran between the shelters, their laughter blending with the soft sound of wind through the needles. It was a world Leora had never entered. A world filled with stories whispered among settlers, some respectful, many twisted, as Kellen guided the horse down the slope. Several warriors stepped forward, alert. They were strong men, hair braided, faces marked by the sun and wind of the western plains. Their hands rested near bows and rifles, not raised but ready. They studied Kellen first, then the woman riding behind him. One of them, tall man with a scar along his jaw, called out in their tongue. Kellen answered calmly, his voice even. Leora did not understand the words, but she understood the tone. Questions, concern, suspicion. Kellen helped her down and positioned himself slightly in front of her. Not to hide her, but to show he stood with her. An elder woman stepped from one of the shelters, wrapped in a thick blanket. Her hair was long and silver, her eyes sharp and steady. Kellen bowed his head in respect. Leora felt an urge to bow too, but fear held her still. "This is Elder Nayeli," Kellen said quietly to Leora. "She guides many of our decisions." Nayeli looked between them, her gaze lingering on Leora's bruised arm and tired eyes. She spoke softly and Kellen translated. "She asks why you came here. She asks if you came by choice." Leora swallowed and nodded. "Yes," she said, voice small at first, then stronger. "I chose to leave my husband. Kellen helped me." Kellen translated her words. The warriors exchanged looks. One of them muttered something under his breath. Nayeli lifted her hand and the camp fell silent. "She says a choice made in fear is still a choice," Kellen explained. "But bringing you here brings danger with you. The settlement will not be calm." "I know," Leora whispered. "I never wish to endanger your people." Nayeli listened as Kellen spoke for her, then replied slowly. "She says danger already lives on this land," Kellen said. "Settlers take more each season. She wants to know if your husband will come with law or with rage." "Rage first," Leora answered without thinking. "Law after, if it suits him." Nellie's eyes hardened a little. She spoke again, voice quiet but firm. "She says you may stay for now," Kellen told Leora. "But the council must meet by the evening fire. They will decide what happens next." Relief and dread tangled inside Leora. She had shelter for the moment, but no promise of a future. Children watched her with wide, curious eyes, some hiding behind their mothers, others braver. A young girl stepped closer, offering a piece of flatbread. Her name, Kellen said, was Sani. Leora accepted the bread with trembling hands, grateful for the simple gesture of kindness in this new world, while Kellen helped settle Leora near one of the campfires. Far back in the settlement another fire burned. Though it came not from wood but from anger, Brant stood in the center of the main street, with his jaw clenched and his fists tight. A small circle of men surrounded him, some with rifles slung over their shoulders, others with weary eyes that did not quite match the hard words they spoke. The sheriff, a broad man named Judge Harper, stood with a hand on his belt. Listening to Brant's furious account, "She was taken," Brant shouted, "dragged off by an Apache right in front of everyone." "You saw it." Several men nodded, their shame at standing back, now twisting into false pride. It was easier to blame the Apache warrior than to admit they had done nothing to stop what they had watched for months. Harper raised a hand. "I saw a man ride in, and a woman choose to go with him," he said. "Looked like she took his hand." Brant's face darkened. She was confused, scared. He tricked her. "You going to stand there and let them steal a settler's wife from under your nose?" Harper hesitated. He knew Brant's temper. He also knew Leora's haunted look every time she came into town. The law out here was thin, stretched across miles of land, and woven with unspoken rules. Interfering with a husband's home was something the town rarely did, yet letting a band of men ride into Apache territory could spark a war. "We need truth, not just fury," Harper said. "If she wants to come back, we bring her home. If she does not, that is another matter. Brant stepped closer, glare burning. She is my wife. There is nothing to discuss. A younger man in the crowd, a blacksmith named Rowan, shifted uncomfortably. His sister had been friends with Leora before her marriage, and he remembered a softer, happier woman. He cleared his throat. Maybe we should try talking first, Rowan suggested. Send a small group under a flag. If she is there by choice, we cannot force her. The old treaty still counts for something. Brant snapped toward him. You calling me a liar? Rowan met his gaze steady. I am saying we should not start a blood feud if we can avoid it. This land already holds too many graves. The street went quiet. Harper looked between them. He could feel the split forming in the town. Some men, already restless from hard winters and tight harvests, were eager for something to direct their frustrations toward. Others, like Rowan, understood that one reckless act could bring the Apache down on them with a force they could not handle. Harper finally spoke. I will not lead a war party, he said, but I will lead a small group to speak with them. Brant, you can ride, but you keep your temper. If Leora says she was taken, we bring her back. If she says she chose to leave, then the law must listen. Brant's lips curled, but he knew he needed the sheriff's backing. Fine, he growled. But if that warrior raises a hand, I will not wait for words. Far across the valley, Leora sat by the Apache campfire, unaware of the deal being struck. She listened to the rhythm of daily life in the camp. Women worked together, grinding grain and preparing food. Men checked weapons, saddled horses, and spoke in low voices about the movement of settlers and herds. Children practiced with small bows and laughed when arrows thudded into straw targets. Kellen sat beside her, explaining small pieces of what she saw. He spoke of hunts, of ceremonies, of how his band moved with the seasons. Leora listened with fascination, realizing how little she truly knew. All her life, she had heard stories painted by fear, stories that called these people savages. Yet here she saw families who cared for one another, elders who guided, warriors who protected rather than destroyed. One man, however, watched her with clear distrust. His name was Talon, a warrior whose brother had once been killed in a clash with settlers. He approached the fire, addressing Kellen with sharp words. Leora caught only fragments. She felt the weight behind them. Talon does not agree with my choice, Kellen said quietly to her after a moment. He says bringing a settler woman here invites danger. He says our people have lost enough. Leora lowered her gaze. He has reason to feel that way. I understand. Understanding does not erase your right to live free, Kellen told her. Yet even as he said it, he knew Talon's warning was not without truth. The main conflict was not just between one husband and one wife, but between two worlds that barely trusted each other. Later, as the sun slid lower, the council gathered around the central fire. Elder Nayeli sat at the center, flanked by warriors and elders. Kellen and Leora stood before them. Talon's eyes burned like coals, while others watched with cautious curiosity. Nayeli spoke at length, her voice calm but strong. Kellen translated as she went. She says our band has always walked a narrow line, he explained. We protect our land and our people, but we also avoid reckless war. She asks if taking you in is an act of mercy or the spark of something worse. Leora's heart pounded. She stepped forward, surprising even herself. If my presence brings danger, she said, I will not hide from that truth. But I cannot return to the man who broke me. I would rather face an open enemy than a closed door filled with fear, Kellen relayed her words. A murmur ran through the council. Even Talon shifted, caught by the raw honesty in her voice. Nayeli's gaze softened, but she did not speak yet. She turned instead to Kellen. She asks what you are willing to risk. He translated slowly, feeling the weight of the question. She says, your choice binds you to whatever comes. Kellen lifted his chin. I will stand between her and what hunts her, he said, both to Nayeli and to Leora. If Brant comes, he faces me first. If the settlers march, they deal with my bow before they touch this camp. Nayeli listened, then finally nodded once. She spoke again, brief and firm. "The council will decide by the next sunset," Kellen said. "Until then, you remain under our protection. No one may force you away." Leora felt a wave of relief, but it carried worry with it. The decision was not final. Every hour that passed gave Brant more time to ride. As night fell once more, Kellen climbed a rocky outcrop at the edge of camp, eyes scanning the dark line of the valley. Leora joined him, wrapping her shawl against the rising wind. Lights flickered faintly in the distance, far off but moving in a slow line. "Riders," Kellen said quietly. "More than one." Leora followed his gaze. Small, distant shapes moved against the pale snow, growing slowly larger with each passing moment. "Is it him?" she whispered. "Is it him?" she whispered. Kellen's jaw tightened. "He is not coming alone," he said. "The settlement rides with him." And the fragile piece of the camp, the thin hope Leora had just begun to feel, trembled on the edge of the coming storm. Kellen kept his eyes fixed on the distant riders for a long time, saying nothing, breathing slow and steady as the cold wind pressed against his skin. Leora stood close enough to feel the strength radiating from him, yet far enough to sense the weight of what waited on the horizon. The old American land had seen storms before, but this storm was born from fear, anger, and choices that could not be undone. She swallowed hard, her heart thudding as the distant shapes grew clearer with every passing breath. "They are still hours away," Kellen finally said, voice low. "But they are not rushing. That means the sheriff leads them." Leora exhaled shakily, hoped he would try peace. "He may," Kellen answered. "But he cannot control Brant. Rage moves faster than reason." Below them, the Apache camp grew more alert. Warriors checked arrows, mounted horses, and spoke in urgent tones. Mothers drew children close, guiding them toward the sheltered side of the trees. The calm from earlier had vanished, replaced by a tension that vibrated through the air like a bowstring drawn tight. Kellen touched Leora's arm gently. "You should stay near Elder Nayeli. If the riders enter the camp, she will stand for you." Leora hesitated, staring at the approaching line again. Fear settled in her stomach, cold and heavy. "What if Brant demands me back in front of the whole camp?" "Then you speak your truth," Kellen said. "I stand beside you." His eyes were steady, filled with a kind of promise she had never been offered in her life. Not ownership, not control, but a promise of protection that expected nothing in return. She nodded softly, trusting the strength in his words. As they descended the ridge, the camp shifted into formation. Warriors moved like pieces of a living shield, forming a loose circle near the central fire. Talon stood at the front, jaw tight, eyes sharp with both anger and duty. When Kellen approached, Talon stepped closer. "They are coming for her," Talon said. "You knew it." "I did," Kellen replied calmly. "We will hear their words. We will answer with honor." Talon's glare hardened. "Honor does not stop bullets." Kellen held his gaze. "Fear also does not guide wisdom." The tension between them sparked like flint against steel. Leora felt the weight of it. Talon's grief ran deep, carved by loss and old wounds settlers had left on his people. She did not blame him for his caution. She only wished she could ease the mistrust her presence created. Elder Nayeli approached them, her blanket drawn around her shoulders, her expression serious but composed. "All eyes watch you now," she said to Kellen. "The choices ahead shape not only your life but ours." Kellen bowed his head respectfully. "I will not fail the band." Nayeli then turned her gaze to Leora, her eyes gentle but piercing. "Your husband will speak with fire. You must speak with truth. Yours does not serve you anymore." Leora nodded, drawing strength from the elder's words. "I will not turn back." The day stretched slow as they prepared for the confrontation. Kellen positioned scouts along the ridge to track the riders' progress, while Talon arranged warriors around the camp in a careful formation. No weapons were raised, yet every warrior carried one. The air thrummed with the quiet readiness of people who hoped for peace, but prepared for danger. As afternoon faded, the scouts signaled that the riders were approaching the edge of Apache territory. Leora's heart hammered. She stood with Nayeli near the central fire, Kellen beside her, Talon nearby with his jaw set like stone. Children were hidden away now, mothers watching from the shelters with tight expressions. Wind rustled through the pines. Then came the sound of hooves. Not a rush, not a charge, but a steady approach. The riders emerged one by one through the trees. Sheriff Harper rode at the front with a white cloth tied to his saddle. Behind him rode 6 men, including Rowan, and at the end, gripping reins so tightly his knuckles had turned white, rode Brant. Leora's breath caught. Even from a distance, she could see the fury twisting his features. The riders halted at the edge of the camp where the warriors stood waiting. Harper raised his hand, signaling peace. "We come to talk," he called out. Nayeli stepped forward, standing with strength that defied age. "Then speak," she said. Harper dismounted slowly. "We do not seek blood today," he said. "We came to learn the truth." Brant shoved past Harper, rage boiling over. "I want my wife." She was taken against her will. Kellen stepped forward before Leora could react. "She chose to leave you." Brant lunged as if to strike Kellen, but Rowan pulled him back sharply. "Not like this," Rowan hissed. "You promised you would listen." Brant's glare could have split stone. "She is my wife. She belongs with me." Leora felt a tremor run through her. The old fear rose, clawing its way up her throat. But then she felt Kellen's steady presence beside her, the silent strength he carried. She stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear. "I do not belong to you," she said. "I left because I feared for my life." Her words cut through the air like a blade. Brant stared at her, shock passing over his face, before anger surged again. "You fear what you do not understand. You fear being a wife. You always were weak." Talon growled under his breath, stepping closer with a fire in his eyes. Kellen raised a hand to stop him. Leora lifted her chin. "I was not weak," she said, louder this time. "I stayed because I believed you would change. You did not." Harper looked between them, troubled. "Leora, if you came by choice, I cannot force you back." Brant rounded on Harper. "She is confused. Look at her. They filled her head with lies." "No one filled my head," Leora said. "My fear began long before today." The camp grew still. Warriors, settlers, even children, hidden near the shelters, listened with breath held tight. Harper sighed deeply. "Brant, the law does not allow a man to drag a woman back if she fears for her safety." Brant's rage ignited. "You side with them over your own people?" "I side with what is right," Harper said firmly. Talon's voice cut in, cold and sharp. "Your right has taken much from us. Do not pretend it protects us." The tension snapped like a taut rope. 2 worlds stood inches from clashing. Kellen stepped forward, placing himself between the groups. "We do not seek war," he said. "We will not hand her over to harm." Brant spat on the ground. "You think you can stop me?" Before Kellen could answer, Rowan spoke. "Brant, look at her. She is not afraid of us. She is afraid of you." The words landed heavy. Brant shook with fury, unable to respond. "We need a moment of cans. We need a moment of calm. Let us speak apart from the crowd." Nayeli stepped forward. "There will be no private words. What is decided here affects every soul on this land." Harper nodded reluctantly. "Then hear this. If Leora chooses to stay, she stays.
Yes.
If she chooses to return, we escort her safely." Brant barked a harsh laugh. "She will return. She knows what waits if she does not." Leora felt her breath falter. She sensed the threat in his voice, the unspoken warning he hoped no one else heard. But the Apache warriors did hear. Their eyes hardened. Kellen spoke quietly. "Your threat does not scare her anymore." Brant stepped closer, ignoring the line of warriors blocking him. "She was mine. She vowed to me." Nayeli's voice rose with authority. "A vow made under fear carries no honor." Brant's face twisted. "Her fear is her weakness." "No," Leora said, stepping forward until she stood almost face to face with him. "My fear comes from you." Silence dropped like snow falling on dry earth. Kellen watched her with quiet admiration, pride flickering in his eyes. Leora did not see it. She was focused only on the man who had held her life in his hands for too long. Harper exhaled. "Brant, the decision is made. If she wishes to stay, you have no claim." Brant trembled with fury, his voice cracking. "You will regret this. All of you." Nayeli stepped forward, raising her hand. Leave now. While Peace still stands, Brant backed away slowly, eyes never leaving Leora's. This is not finished, he hissed. Harper glared at him but motioned the men to mount. Rowan stayed a moment longer, meeting Leora's gaze with a small, encouraging nod before turning to follow. As the riders left the camp, warriors tracked their retreat, but the sense of danger did not fade. The threat now lay in Brant's silence, in the rage he carried home like a burning ember, ready to catch fire. Leora stood trembling, breath shallow. Kellen stepped beside her. It is not over, he said quietly, but you stood strong. Nayeli approached with steady steps. What comes now will test all of us. The sun will rise with new choices, new dangers. That evening, the Apache warriors held watch around the camp. Fires flickered, shadows danced, and every voice carried a weight of waiting. Leora could not rest. She felt the air tighten, as if the land itself knew a storm was gathering. Kellen joined her near the ridge, gazing into the dark valley below. Brant's rage will grow, he said. He may return without the sheriff next time. Leora nodded, her voice soft. I do not want anyone hurt because of me. Kellen turned to her, eyes steady. You are not the cause. He is the storm. But storms can be faced. Leora looked out at the horizon, where the last light faded. What happens now? Kellen's jaw tightened. Now we prepare. We stand together. The night grew deeper, colder, and far quieter than the land liked. But somewhere in the dark, the storm that would lead them into the climax of their story had already begun to move. The night that followed was the longest Leora had ever lived through. The camp remained under watch. Warriors moved like silent shadows among the trees, keeping their senses open to the slightest shift in the wind. Kellen stayed near the ridge, his bow in hand, scanning the valley with the patience of someone who had spent his whole life studying danger before it struck. Leora sat close to the fire, her shawl wrapped tight, her heart bound to every whisper of movement around her. By dawn, no riders had approached. Only the pale light of morning broke through the clouds, but sometimes quiet was not comfort. Sometimes it was a sign of something planning in the dark. Kellen returned to the fire with a small nod to Nayeli, and though he said nothing, Leora sensed his unease. We cannot wait for danger to decide when it reaches us, Nayeli said calmly. Today we carry truth to those who must hear it. Kellen understood. You mean the settlers? She nodded once. Peace cannot survive in silence. If we do not speak, fear will speak for us. Leora looked between them, unsure of what her place was in this choice. Should I go too? Nayeli studied her for a long moment. Your voice is part of this truth, but only if you feel strong enough. Leora took a breath, feeling the weight of her journey pressed into her chest. She had spent years being quiet, years allowing fear to shape her life. Today, for the first time, she felt the steady ground beneath her feet, a ground she had chosen. I will go, she said softly. Kellen's eyes warmed with pride. Then we stand together. They set out toward the settlement before the sun fully rose, accompanied by a small group of trusted warriors. Talon rode among them, still cautious, still distant, yet holding his place with full duty. He had watched danger take from his people before, and though his mistrust lingered, he respected any soul willing to face truth rather than hide from it. As they approached the settlement, a few early risers stiffened at the sight of the Apache riders. Tools paused mid-air, doors froze halfway shut, but the warriors came with lowered weapons, moving at a steady and peaceful pace. Harper stood outside the sheriff's office, his face lined with exhaustion, but alert. Rowan appeared beside him almost immediately. Leora felt her heart twist when she saw the two men. They were not the cause of her suffering, but they were the ones caught between their duty and her freedom. Kellen dismounted first, signaling peace. Leora followed, stepping down with trembling but steady legs. Harper lifted a hand. You come under peace? Under truth, Kellen said. Rowan nodded respectfully to Leora. You look stronger than yesterday. I feel stronger than yesterday, she answered softly. Harper's gaze shifted to the warriors behind them. Where is Brant? Leora shook her head. We have not seen him. Harper frowned deeply. He left camp after we returned, took no men with him, rode in the dark. Kellen scanned the horizon. A man who rides alone in anger is the most dangerous kind. Harper rubbed his forehead. I agreed to speak truth. I still will. But some men hear only what they choose. Rowan looked at Harper, then at Leora. Do you want to speak in the center of town? Folks will listen? Everyone has been talking since yesterday. Nayeli stepped forward. Truth spoken in the open becomes stronger than rumor. Let the people hear. Harper nodded. Then let us gather them. Within half an hour, the main street filled with settlers. Some leaned on fences, some crossed their arms, some whispered among themselves. Women with flour on their aprons stood beside men still carrying tools. Children peeked from behind their mothers' skirts, their eyes curious and wide. And though Harper searched the crowd more than once, Brant was nowhere to be seen. Leora stood in the center of the street with Kellen and Nayeli. Talon and the other warriors formed a respectful line behind them. Rowan moved closer, ready to steady any rising tension. Harper cleared his throat. Everyone knows why we are gathered, he began. Yesterday, Leora chose to leave Brant. She spoke her reasons clearly. Today, she and the Apache elders want to speak again. Not to provoke conflict, but to set truth where it belongs. The crowd murmured. Leora felt eyes pressing on her from every direction, but she remembered Nayeli's words. Fear served no one. With a deep breath, she stepped forward. My life has been full of silence, she said. I stayed quiet because I believed it was my duty as a wife. Stayed quiet because fear kept me there. But silence was not peace. It was survival. Several women in the crowd lowered their eyes, understanding too well. I left because I believed if I stayed, I would lose the last part of myself that still hoped for life. Kellen did not take me. He answered a cry I could no longer hide. I choose my path now. A man in the crowd called out, but he is your husband. Folks talk. Nayeli stepped forward with surprising force for her age. A bond made through fear is no bond at all. A woman's safety is not gossip, it is truth. The street fell quiet. Kellen then spoke. We do not seek to take land or bring war. Protect our people as you protect yours. But peace cannot exist when fear rules either side. Rowan raised his voice next. No one here spoke when we saw trouble in their home. That shame is ours to carry. But silence ends today. The settlers exchanged uneasy glances. Many looked at Leora differently now, not with judgment, but with a shifting understanding. Harper stepped forward. Leora is free to choose her home. No law binds her to harm. And no man here will force her back. Before another word could be said, the sharp crack of a rifle echoed from the far end of the street. Women screamed. Men ducked. Warriors moved instantly into a defensive stance. Leora froze. Brant stepped from behind the feed store, rifle in hand, face twisted with rage and desperation. She is mine, he yelled. You cannot take her. Kellen moved in front of Leora, without hesitation.
Helena rushed forward too.
Rowan tried to approach Brant, but Brant fired into the dirt near his boots, warning him back. Brant, Harper shouted, put the gun down. This ends now. Brant's eyes were wild. It ends only when she returns. Leora stepped out from behind Kellen, voice strong. I will not return to fear. Not today. Not ever. Her words shook something in Brant's expression. He lifted the rifle again, hands trembling. Kellen tensed. Talon raised his bow. The crowd braced for disaster, but Rowan moved. Quick, steady, determined. He stepped between Brant and the others, hands open. This is not you, he said. This anger has eaten you alive. Let it go. She is choosing life. Let her live. For a second, Brant's shoulders sagged. The rifle lowered an inch. His breath hitched. But grief, pride, and fear fought their last battle inside him. With a heavy cry, he dropped to his knees, the rifle falling from his hand. Tears mixed with dust on his cheeks. She was all I had, he whispered. Leora's heart softened with sympathy, but not regret. You lost me long before yesterday, she said gently. You lost me when fear became your voice. Harper and Rowan stepped forward, helping Brant to his feet. This time, Brant no longer fought. Harper guided him away as the crowd parted. Nayeli placed a gentle hand on Leora's back. The storm has passed. Kellen turned to her, his gaze warm, relieved, proud. You faced him with courage. Courage belongs to you. Leora felt breath rush from her lungs in a soft release. The land around her felt different now, lighter, as if the old American plains themselves had been holding their breath with her. In the days that followed, peace settled quietly between the settlers and the Apache camp. Harper worked with Nayeli to rebuild communication. Rowan visited often, offering help with tools and supplies. Children from the settlement watched the Apache children run freely along the ridge, laughter mixing across cultures. Talon's distrust faded slowly, replaced by a respectful acceptance. One evening, he approached Leora by the fire. "Strength grows from truth," he said. Kellen and Leora spent more time together near the ridge, watching sunsets blend gold with crimson. Their bond deepened, built not on rescue, but on choice. Kellen showed her how to read the land, how to sense weather in the wind, how to find peace in the quiet spaces between the pines. Leora taught him songs from her childhood, soft melodies carried by distant memory. One slow evening, as the sky turned silver and pink, Kellen looked at her with steady warmth. "The journey ahead will ask much from us," he said, "but you do not walk it alone." Leora smiled, feeling a strength inside her she never dreamed she would have. "I choose this path," she said, "and I choose it with you." The wind carried their words across the valley. The land, old and weathered, seemed to welcome them. And for the first time in many years, Leora felt fully alive, standing not in fear, but in hope. Ready to build a life shaped by freedom, truth, and a love that grew from courage rather than silence.